Okay, so yesterday there was a boxing match between Angela Carini of Italy and Imane Khelif of Algeria. And if you go back and you watch the match, it started out like pretty much any boxing match you've ever seen. They get into the ring, they begin to exchange some blows, and you think, okay, this is just going to be an interesting boxing match. But about 40 seconds or so into the match, Iman lands a really, really big punch on Angela, which stumbles her a little bit, doesn't knock her out, doesn't, anything other than just kind of maybe stuns her a little bit. And Angela immediately kind of throws up her hands. She stops the match. She walks over to her corner, and her corner immediately indicates that, she's done fighting. And this caused a huge storm across the internet because that's obviously very weird for a boxing match for a boxer to just give up. And what came out of this is that basically all across Twitter, all across so many platforms, there was this dialogue, or not really a dialogue, I guess. It was more of just statements that Iman was or is transgender, that Iman used to be a man and transitioned into being a woman. And over the years, there's been a lot of very heated debate about transgender athletes in sports, which I think is a very valid, conversation to have. But fast forward into today, so this happened yesterday, go until today, some more facts started to come out about Iman. So Iman, like we know, she's from Algeria, and apparently there have been childhood photos that have come forward of her as a child, and she is a little girl. And there's also been, a lot of discussion around the fact that she is from Algeria, which is a country where being transgender is illegal. And it's not likely that they would allow a transgender athlete to compete for their country in the Olympics, which I think is something to consider as well. And then more and more has come out since then, and we've learned that Iman grew up a little girl, and she grew up with XY chromosomes. And I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend to be this biologist, doctor. I'm not going to lecture you guys on the biology of the situation because I don't know it fully. And this is kind of my point of the video is that I don't know it fully, and also I don't think the internet knows it fully. This is a developing situation, and before I get into kind of why I'm making this video, I do want to point out that, if you do want to get the kind of biological explanation, there is an excellent YouTube video by Brian Suterer. Hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm going to link it in my description, and he goes into great detail about people that can grow up as a female with XY chromosomes, and it's really interesting. It's very, very educational, and it's a good video to watch. But the reason that I'm making this video today, again, isn't so much to take a position about the boxing match or whether Iman should be able to compete. The reason that I'm making this video today is because I've kind of hit my point of frustration. Well, I've hit the point of frustration a long time ago. I've hit my point where I cannot take Twitter or any other platform seriously anymore because there's just so much misinformation that exists. And it seems like we are living in an age where we prioritize engagement and being the first one to talk about something over actually getting something factually correct, which I find really, really frustrating. So yesterday, like I said, after this boxing match, if you went on Twitter, there were so many prominent accounts that were either tweeting, retweeting, quote tweeting, whatever, and just flat out saying that Iman was transgender, used to be, grew up as a man and then transitioned into being a woman, just so she could beat women at the Olympics. And all these allegations against Iman were very serious and called, a lot of things into question. And then as the day goes on, we learn more and more. And the frustration for me is that a lot of that misinformation still exists on Twitter. A lot of it hasn't been community noted, which I think is very interesting because community notes are supposed to be there to prove and disprove. And throughout the day today, I went through and tried to do as much research as I could on Iman and where she's from and how she grew up. And I looked through, many, many different posts and websites and publications. And I found actually an excellent Reddit thread, which I'm going to kind of go over in just a minute, which I know when you hear Reddit thread, you're like, oh my gosh, you're talking about misinformation. And you're going to sit here and talk about a Reddit thread. But the Reddit thread is well backed up by a lot of research. There's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of references to where they got their information from. And again, I'm going to go through that in a second because the situation with Imane is actually really, really complicated. It's very deep, and there's a lot of things to consider. But again, my frustration is with a lot of these accounts on Twitter, they post things without ever really verifying anything. Because again, the goal of social media nowadays is to be the first one to post something, because the first one to post something tends to get more views and more attention. But there's absolutely no importance, I don't think, placed on getting things factually correct, which is very, very frustrating. And I've been on Twitter and I've seen posts that are just clearly debunked, but they're never taken down because someone's already gotten 45,000 likes, 10,000 retweets, they've gotten their, income or whatever it is from X or Twitter. But, as much as I have supported Elon Musk and his endeavor to ensure free speech is solidified in this country and throughout the world, I do think it's important that he recognizes that as he hosts this kind of town square that is Twitter now, or the community square, whatever you want to call it, it's the place that everyone goes pretty much for their information now, that we need to make sure that we're prioritizing things that are factually correct over things that are just salacious and interesting and juicy, but they're the first to be posted, and so that's my frustration as someone who, whenever I get on YouTube and I talk about something, I want to make sure that I'm providing as much relevant detail, as much facts as I can. And I always want to try and offer a perspective that has, taken a look at different sides of an argument. And I just don't feel like we have that anymore at all. And I do want to talk about the Reddit thread just a little bit. So I went through, I read the thread, and I summarized the thread in some bullet points. And so I'm going to go through just a few of the points here in just a second. I will link the entire Reddit thread in the comments as well, just so you guys can go through it if you want. But it starts off talking about with Imane's background. So Imane, born a woman, is a longtime competitor in women's boxing. Competed into the 2020 Olympics and the 2022 World Championships without any gender-related issues. Which is interesting now to think that Imane's been boxing for a while and there really hasn't been anything brought up, in the early days at least. Imane won a silver medal at the 2022 World Championships after passing all the eligibility tests. And then in 2023, she competed and reached the round of 16, defeating a Russian boxer. Post-match, she was tested again and declared ineligible based on these results in a test from 2022. And then it goes into a little bit of like the IBA. So the IBA did not specify the type of test, but claimed it wasn't a testosterone test. The Russian IBA president stated Khelif had XY chromosomes based on a DNA test. Questions were raised about the credibility due to the IBA's history of corruption and Russian influence. And then there was some inconsistencies in the testing and the eligibility. So Khelif had no issues in 2022, but was disqualified in 2023 using the same test. No evidence suggests Khelif has higher testosterone. She competed in the 2020 Olympics without incident. The IBA did not administer a testosterone test and has not provided clear reasons for disqualification. And then basically it goes into the IBA, the Russian IBA, and their stances on things, and the kind of history of corruption in the IBA as well. And so, it's one of these things that, again, I think is interesting. There's a lot of detail to it. There's a lot of background. There's a lot of information that we still don't know. And honestly, I think there's some misinformation on both sides of the kind of political, ideological debate to this thing, because I think the people who are, let's say, more on the right side here, right meaning more like conservative, not right as incorrect, but right as in like more of the conservative side, just flat out came out and said that, Imane was a man, transitioned to being a woman, which I think is, from what we know of the history now, is just isn't true at all. But I've also seen things kind of on the left, or more of a liberal perspective. I've seen people make up things that Imane has certain conditions, which has caused her to have have taken more testosterone or which caused her to have the XY chromosomes, certain rare conditions. But again, there's no confirmation of any of this. And so, I did not create this video to cause a firestorm in my comments about this debate. I really truly created this YouTube video to call to action the fact that we need to start prioritizing correct information over just juicy, interesting takes that people have on Twitter. And so you guys can certainly let me know what you think of the situation. But I really just want to challenge people to be better. Not so much the accounts that do these things, because I know they're never going to stop doing these things, especially like on Twitter and stuff like that. But I would challenge Elon and other owners of some of these big tech sites to make sure you're prioritizing factual information over just quick headlines. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. You guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.